Department of JICA, Japan, and then Mr. Riyad Rareb, Acting Director at the Islamic Development Bank. So that without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Adil Abdellatif. Adil, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Tariq, and good afternoon, and maybe good evening in some parts of the world, and good morning to the Western Hemisphere. I am very glad actually to join this first DG Forum. So the 12th Forum, as Tariq said, is my first. I would like to welcome all of you to the high-level Forum of Director Generals for the Development Cooperation. And I take this opportunity at the outset to thank the Japan International Cooperation Agency and the Islamic Development Bank for supporting and co-organizing this meeting with the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. This year, as all you know, and we are in this virtual mode, we meet as the world grapples with the COVID-19 pandemic. It is more than a global health crisis. It is an economic, humanitarian, security, and human rights crisis. The pandemic has laid bare severe and systemic inequalities across our world, and it is affecting particularly vulnerable population in many parts of the world and also in many parts in the global south, and especially in countries with weaker health systems, and those facing existing humanitarian crisis are of course the hardest hit. Historically, the Director General Forum, now in its 12th year, has provided an opportunity to discuss common challenges, take stock of achievements, and share experiences and forge new partnerships. Scaling up of the lessons and solutions we have at our disposal will be the lasting measures for our success as we endeavor to build back better from the pandemic. I would like to see this opportunity to share some ideas with you that you may consider during your discussion, because this forum presents us with a unique opportunity to deepen our understanding of the challenges which are too big for any country in the world to address single-handedly. Challenges that key policymakers recognize to require, among other things, of course, South-South collective action at regional and also global levels. One of course, of these first challenges is the socio-economic impact of COVID-19, which has exhausted resources of all countries of the world, and particularly, of course, in the global south, financial and otherwise, of all development cooperation agencies throughout the world. And here the question is, how can we work better together to address the pandemic in an equitable manner? Another challenge is, as all you know, we started in 2015, the implementation of Agenda 2030. And over the last year, SDG achievements have been unraveling in many countries of the South. How can the principles of South-South cooperation, national ownership, equality, mutual respect, national sovereignty, mutual benefit, non-conditionality and solidarity guide our work as we will back better? And the third one, actually, as you all know, just 2 years ago, we, maybe many of you have met in Buenos Aires in 2019, where we reached actually the outcome document, BEPA +40. And now we have to think, how we can revive this outcome document that, of course, has been some, of course, thinking has been shifting away from what we have agreed upon 2 years ago. Unfortunately, most of this work that we have done in 2 years ago has been slowed due to the breakout of the pandemic. How far have we come and what adjustments can we make? And finally, there is another issue that we may consider also in our deliberations, is the future development cooperation itself. Insights on what to expect in the medium to long term, and how South-South and triangular cooperation should be positioned, as we are actually have started last year the decade of action for implementation of Agenda 2030. These are just some of the challenges you may wish to consider over the coming days in your deliberations. I would like also to seize this opportunity to inform you about new developments at our end from the UN system, as we actually have been requested, our office has been requested by the Secretary General to lead and coordinate the development of the United Nations system-wide strategy on South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation for sustainable development. And over 30 UN entities contributed to the preparation of the strategy through the United Nations interagency mechanism for South-South cooperation. And also we have participation of many resident coordinators from the UN system. Around 15 of them actually have contributed to this effort. The strategy was approved last year by the Executive Committee of the Secretary General. It provides a system-wide policy for the first time, system-wide policy orientation for UN entities to galvanize a coordinated, coherent approach of UN system policy and programmatic work on South-South and triangular cooperation. And we have been working also in the last year on preparing an action plan that has been developed to facilitate the implementation and monitoring of the strategy at all levels, and it is expected to be approved soon, maybe in 1 month. And I see this opportunity to thank all the UN agencies for their contribution and for support during the process of the drafting of the strategy and also the action plan. And this strategy, in fact, is a response to a long-standing calls from the member states. Moving forward, our office stands ready to facilitate also your South-South efforts to build bridges, cement partnerships, and establish sustainable strategies for scaling up impact together. I would like also to see this opportunity to share with you what our office actually has been continually working on knowledge sharing. So we have and partnership brokering through the platform called South-South Galaxy, which enable users to access and navigate a broad range of knowledge, solutions, cutting-edge research, capacity building initiatives, and partners. I encourage you to utilize the platform to share knowledge, make connections, and take part in ideas, views, and solutions exchanges. Our office also support the work of the Global Coalition of Think Tank Networks, South-South Global Thinkers Initiative, which engages over 250 think tanks from the Global South who are researching a variety of topics which may be useful in your work. During the fourth quarter of this year, we may also witness the 10th Global South-South Expo, which is expected to take place in Bangkok, Thailand, hosted by the government of Thailand and ISCAP. This is an opportunity for you to strategically engage with all development actors, including the private sector, civil society, and academic and philanthropic organizations, to scale up concrete Southern-grown development initiatives. All platforms of the United Nations Office of South-South Cooperation are available to you to be utilized at any time for the promotion of your South-South and triangular cooperation activities. Finally, our office is pleased to facilitate the implementation of your recommendations under the overall guidance of BAPA Plus 40 outcome document and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And finally, I wish you every success in your deliberations. Thank you. Over to you, Tariq.
Well, thank you very much, Adel, for this opening remarks and also for sharing with us insight and important information about major milestones for the promotion of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation, starting with the BAPA Plus 40 conference, but also the UN strategy on South-South and triangular cooperation. These are really important elements in order to enforce to strengthen South-South cooperation, triangular cooperation globally, but also within the United Nations system. Thank you very much, Adel, for this really important opening remarks. Now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Naoki Ando, Director General at JICA. Naoki, please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening from Tokyo, and good morning and good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished delegates and colleagues. It is my great honor to make opening remarks on behalf of JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency, at this very important high-level forum of Directors General for Development Cooperation. First of all, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to all participating countries, agencies, and co-organizers to hold this important forum in spite of very, very difficult conditions caused by COVID-19. Since the first BAPA in 1978, South-South and triangular cooperation continues to progress and develop. And in BAPA plus 14 in 2018, it has become an indispensable modality to achieve the SDGs. This successful progress can be attributed to all efforts made by all countries and agencies attending here. And of course, we have to appreciate for long-term leadership of United Nations, Office of South-South Cooperation, and also Islamic Development Bank as a co-organizer of this forum. They are always providing important advice and intellectual input to this forum. This year's forum is focusing on trend, opportunity, and challenges on the path to sustainable development, especially strengthening South-South and triangular cooperation in the COVID-19 context. This agenda is really important today. Situation of COVID-19 differs from countries to countries. Government capacity, people's behaviors, natural conditions, social and economic structures, all different. So every government has to think and find their own solution. So mutual learning opportunities and South-South and triangular cooperation is definitely a big help. We expect all participants to share your challenges and valuable experiences of South-South and triangular cooperation in order to create a momentum for more effective and innovative cooperation. JICA has long committed South-South and triangular cooperation. During the past 20 years, we have received approximately 40,000 participants in our third country training program. And we sent approximately 1,600 third country experts from South to South who made a very excellent contribution to beneficiaries' countries. JICA believes that South-South cooperation enables developing countries more access to a broader range of resources, expertise, and capacities. When facing similar development challenges, sharing development strategy, policy priorities, and even practical tactics is much, much more effective than traditional North-South development assistance. Can you see it? This is, please look this handbook. It's a Indonesian maternal child health handbook. It's a, sorry, welcome to my small room, but it's very difficult to show you this handbook. There is a weight record page or record of vaccination or some very useful information for maternal and child health. It's really covering, breastfeeding or nutrition balance or, first treatment of diarrhea was like that. is really informative handbook for newborn babies and maternal mothers, new mothers. And JICA supported Indonesian government first and shifted to triangular cooperation for this handbook. And this handbook is now utilized by 200 million newborn babies and their mothers in 50 countries. This is Afghanistan handbook. This is Angola handbook. They are, very importantly, they are not translation. You know, Indonesian handbook and Afghanistan handbook, they are developed in each country in accordance with each culture and social context. And moreover, this successful project idea came from not JICA, but one Indonesian medical doctor, Dr. Andoli Ansar. He visited Japan under JICA's invitation in 1992. And he found that Japanese, this kind of handbook can be applied to Indonesia. So initial idea came from South country and application and spread through South-South cooperation mechanism. So all came from the framework of South-South cooperation. So through this kind of projects, JICA has become more confident with great potential of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. In the context of COVID-19, JICA has launched African Partnership Program for Public Health Emergency through advanced research and education. More than 20 countries are participating to this program. And Noguchi Memorial Research Institute in Ghana, which is our important partner, conducted 80% of the PCR test in Ghana during the very first 3 months of pandemic. From January to February of this year, Ghana hosted a third country online training, and 15 experts from 9 countries in West Africa participated. And now, JICA will continue our commitment to South-South and triangular cooperation. Capacity development of national institutes for South-South and triangular cooperation is one of our prioritized pillars. We will organize an online program for this purpose in collaboration with the Brazilian Cooperation Agency, ABC, and the United Nations Office South-South Cooperation next week, inviting cooperating agency of 40 countries from various regions. JICA is also launching in this year, JICA VAN, that stands for Virtual Academy and Network. We are planning to provide a virtual place where alumni of our cooperation, our training programs, to continue each other's network and a qualified public practitioner, public service practitioners can exchange their experiences. That is the idea of that initiative. So JICA will continue to support South-South and triangular cooperation under changing environment. Finally, with the value of inclusive, diverse, and dynamic nature of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation in mind, I sincerely hope that this forum will provide all of us with useful opportunities to tackle COVID-19 crisis and to achieve sustainable development goals. I'm really looking forward to listening fruitful discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Naoki, on behalf of JICA. for this really important remarks. So JICA has been our partners from the beginning for the organization of the G Forum. And you have given a simple and very important examples how JICA is a pioneering country when it comes to triangular cooperation, while respecting the principle of South-South and triangular cooperation. And the major principle is, of course, the principle of ownership. So thank you very much for this opening remarks. Now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Riyad Rageb, Acting Director at the Islamic Development Bank. Riyad, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Tariq. Shukran, Tariq. Your Excellency, Mr. Adel Abdul Latif, Director General of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation. Your Excellency, Mr. Naoki Ondo, Director General, Operation Strategic Department, JICA, Japan. Dear colleague joining us from across the globe, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, assalamu alaikum. On behalf of the Islamic Development Bank, I would like to welcome you to the 12th edition of the High-Level Forum of Director General for Development Cooperation. I'm availing of this opportunity to thank our partner, the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, and the Japan International Cooperation Agency for inviting us to co-organize this important forum. Thank you, colleagues. We gather today under special circumstances dictated by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, which has caused much disruption to many aspects of our work as well as our everyday lives. Let me start by wishing that the DG Forum in 2022 will be held physically under normal circumstances. Dear colleague, as you all know, 2019 was marked by the second high-level conference on South-South cooperation, or BAPA Plus 40. BAPA Plus 40 was a substantive undertaking led by the UN, particularly the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, and contributed to by all member states of the UN. It culminated in the formulation of the outcome document, which outlined many objective goals and areas of improvements for enhancing and scaling up South-South cooperation and triangle cooperation to achieve sustainable development goals. Today, during our discussion and deliberation, we should keep in mind the BAPA Plus 40 outcome document and ask ourselves how much we implemented since the adoption of the document and what can we do more. Dear colleague, in 2020, like all our partners, our priorities shifted significantly due to the pandemic. We had to rapidly align our work to support the needs of our member countries related to COVID-19 response and recovery. However, BAPA Plus 40 recommendation continues to be a priority for us in the bank. And we decided to focus particularly on strengthening the institutional arrangement for South-South cooperation at the national and regional levels in our member countries. With our strategic partner, the South Center, we developed the concept of national ecosystems for South-South and triangle cooperation and formulated a capacity development program with a financial envelope of $20 million to support member countries to set up effective national institutional arrangement for South-South cooperation. So far, we are happy to report that we have initiated several projects under this program in line with the BAPA Plus 40 recommendations. That's a concrete action taken by the bank to implement the recommendation of BAPA despite the crisis. Dear colleagues, all of us have experienced challenges and have learned lessons from the current crisis. As the Islamic Development Bank, I would like to share with you two major takeaways on our South-South cooperation experience during COVID-19 pandemic, which can be summarized in two words. Those words seems to be simple. Those words are solidarity and resilience. I'm repeating those words, solidarity and resilience. First, we were pleased to see that many countries of the South did their best to support one another to deal with the COVID-19 crisis. When it comes to the member country of the bank, we saw that solidarity prevailed and countries rushed to help each other with whatever resources they have. We were pleased to be part of this effort by facilitating several South-South exchanges. For example, we partnered with the UN Office for South-South Cooperation to support the collaboration between Palestine and Sudan to improve the capacity of national medical labs. We did the same with Tunisia and Comoros. We collaborated with Pakistan to support Somalia. We benefited from the expertise of the Institut Pasteur of Senegal to assist 10 member countries in Africa to enhance their testing capacity. For the first time also, we engaged a non-member country, Singapore, to connect their expertise with several countries, including Indonesia and Jordan, to build capacity in areas like integrating artificial intelligence into response effort for COVID and producing high-performing respiratory masks. These are encouraging examples of what the South can do through solidarity. The second lesson that we learned is that while some countries of the South did what they could, there are still shortcomings in terms of preparedness and responsiveness of their development cooperation agency and mechanisms. Overall, resilience is still an issue, and much more collaboration is needed to improve existing systems and mechanisms of South-South and triangular cooperation at the national, regional, and global level. That requires us to look into South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation in a new light. The South and the North have to question the existing mechanisms we have in place in areas including technical cooperation, transfer of technology and know-how, trade, cross-border investment, financing development, among others. We have to make significant improvement in development cooperation and multilateralism that benefit all of us and not just a few. Dear colleague, we can all agree that more, not less cooperation is our answer to many of our challenges. Whether it's in the form of bilateral, regional, or global cooperation and partnership, all dimensions of development cooperation are needed so we can collectively defeat any challenge and come out stronger. In this regard, the Islamic Development Bank reiterates its unwavering support to South-South cooperation among its member countries and beyond. We will continue to develop result-oriented partnership. We will continue to innovate with new mechanisms and approaches to help solving development challenges, and will continue to do our utmost to remain engaged in international platforms to influence policy dialogue on South-South cooperation. During the next few days, we'll have the opportunity to hear from all of you about your experience in addressing the pandemic through the mechanism of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. We will share lessons and insight about this special period, its impact on the achievement of BAPA plus 40 recommendation in particular, as well as the Sustainable Development Goal in general. With this thought, I would like to thank again our partner, the UN Office for South-South Cooperation and the Japan International Cooperation Agencies. I would like also to thank our colleagues who made this event a reality. Tariq, Yoko from the UN Office of South-South Cooperation, Nozomi, Sayaka from JICA, and Farouk from the bank. Again, I welcome you to the 12th edition of the DG Forum, and we look forward to our consultation in the coming days while keeping in mind solidarity and resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Riyad. I'd like to thank you also for this important opening remarks. And also I'd like to thank the bank for the partnership that is having with the UN Office for South-South Cooperation. I was really happy to hear that you said that the BAPA plus 40 recommendations are a priority for the bank. I think this is an important statement. And we're working, of course, together in order to see how we can implement in an effective way these recommendations. And also by highlighting an important aspect in order to face the pandemic, which are the concept of solidarity and resilience. Thank you very much for this opening remarks. So once again, I'd like to thank all our speakers for this opening remarks. And I'd like to share with you some element of information about this DG Forum. So this DG Forum will be mainly focusing on two topics. The first one will be focusing on the assessment of our effort in implementing the BAPA plus 40 recommendation, and how, based on the achievement and our analysis of the challenges, how we can further the implementation of this recommendation and looking for new opportunities of cooperation and partnership. I think cooperation, partnership, and coordination was really a key concept highlighted by our speakers at the opening. So the second topic that will be discussed and addressed during this DG forum is how we can engage collectively in a reflection on the challenges and opportunities of the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially when it comes to South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. What are the lessons learned and how we can do better in the future in case we'll have to face global challenges similar to the COVID-19? How we can coordinate and cooperate more effectively for the benefit of all, because we are living now in a very interdependent world, and this pandemic has shown that nobody is immune to this pandemic until everyone is immune. With the vaccination, we do see lights at the end of the tunnel, but so many challenges remain. International cooperation and solidarity will be key in order to help us all to exit this crisis. So there's why we wish also to hear your views, your insights and ideas, how we can strengthen South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation in this regard, as we are trying as an international community in order to overcome this challenge and this crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic. And let me say also that now it has become a tradition that the DG Forum will culminate with a document that will contain conclusions and recommendations on the way forward and how we can strengthen and enforce our cooperation and partnership based on the ideas or proposals that will be discussed during the forum. The document will be, of course, shared with all of you, and we'd like to receive your ideas and input and how to make it a document that will be implementable, so we can come the next time in our sessions and editions of the DG Forum and see how we have implemented this recommendation. Now I'd like just to give you an idea about the different sessions of the DG Forum. As I highlighted at the beginning, this is the first time that we are having a DG Forum virtually. So the reason why we have changed the format, and especially because of the time difference between the different regions, because we wanted and we want to engage all partners from South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. So after this, the opening, so today, this morning, we'll have two sessions. The two sessions, the first one will be focusing on the following topic: achievement for South-South and triangular cooperation since BAPA plus 40. How far are we in achieving the goal set in the outcome document? ? And the session will be moderated by Ms. Anita Yupari Aguado, Economic Affairs Officer at the Office of the Secretary General of UNCTAD. Afterward, we'll have our second session for this morning, and we'll be focusing on the following theme: trends, opportunities, and challenges posed by the COVID-19 crisis for South-South and triangular cooperation, and will be moderated by Dr. Carlos Correa, Executive Director of the South Center. And afterward, we'll have 1 hour break, and then we will go at 10:30 New York time to the first breakout session for the Americas. That will be the program of today. And then we will resume our work tomorrow. And then we'll go to the breakout session for Asia. And the session will take place from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. tomorrow, New York time. And then we'll have the third breakout session that will take place also tomorrow from 8 to 10 a.m. New York time. And this session will be dedicated, the breakout session, for Africa, Middle East, and Europe. The two breakout sessions will be the program for tomorrow, and then we will resume the third day that we will have, once again, a plenary session of the DG Forum, and at that time, we'll have the moderators of the 3 breakout sessions coming to the plenary to report on what about the conclusions and recommendations and insight that we will have received from this different breakout session. And the topic will be the following: the future of development cooperation, insight and what to expect in the medium to long term, and how South-Southern Triangular cooperation should be positioned in the new decade of action. So that will be also another opportunity for the participants to share the ideas, your insight, how we can use South-South cooperation, triangular cooperation, in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, but most importantly in the current context, how we can tackle and face the challenge of the COVID-19, especially that we are entering a new phase of the vaccination, and what are the challenges and how we can overcome them. And then we'll finish our DG Forum closing remarks from the co-organizers. So this is the program of the DG Forum of this year. And without further ado, now I'd like to move on to the first session of this DG Forum. And as I said before, it will be dedicated to BAPA, the lessons that we have learned during this almost 2 years of the implementation of the BAPA, 2 years of the implementation of the BAPA plus 40 recommendations. And it will be moderated by Ms. Anita Yupari Aguado, Economic Affairs Officer at the Office of the Secretary General of UNCTAD. Anita, please, you have the floor. I hope, yes. We cannot hear you, and I think, yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me now, please?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just about to say thank you very much to the UN Office of South-South Cooperation and also to the co-organizers of this DG Forum for inviting us to moderate this session, which, as has been said before, takes place in a very special circumstances where a global pandemic threatened one of the basic human rights, which is the right to health and well-being. At UNCTAD, we are really working like all the UN entity agencies, facilitating and supporting South-South cooperation, as it is part of our foundation and of the establishment of UNCTAD as well. We give particular attention to the needs and challenges of developing countries and facilitate South-South cooperation within the work that we do from different perspectives. As the UN body specialized in the integrated treatment of finance, investment, technology, and trade, we are working from different perspectives, such as producing publication with policy recommendations and other issues, and also technical cooperation and our meetings and intergovernmental body sessions as well. Having said that, I want to introduce this session. As Tariq has said, it is the main purpose of this first session is to taking a stock of achievements for South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation since BAPA plus 40. We will address questions such as how far are we in achieving the goals set in the outcome document. The main objectives of this session is to provide an opportunity to take a stock of what has been achieved so far in achieving the goals set out in the BAPA plus 40 outcome document, with particular focus on arrangements and rules of development cooperation agencies. In this regard, I will introduce the panelists who will have 5 minutes each one to make their intervention. I will invite Mr. Juan Rocataglia, Minister Counselor from the Directorate General of International Cooperation, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Worship from Argentina, who will present us his remarks from the host BAPA plus 40 country. Please, Mr. Rocataglia, the floor is yours, and you have 5 minutes for your intervention. Thank you. Mr. Rocataglia, is he connected, please? Seems that...
I think, yes. Anita, if he is not connected, maybe you can move to the next speaker.
I will move to the next speaker.
I think it's here.
Yes, we'll see. I will move then to Ms. Anita Amorin, who is the head of the Emerging and Special Partnership Unit in the International Labour Organization. Please, Anita, the floor is yours, and you have 5 minutes for your intervention.
Thanks, Anita, and also like to thank the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, in particular Adel, Abdelatif, Tarek, Yoko, and also the Japanese government for the organization. I'm going to very briefly share a PowerPoint. I'll try to keep to 5 minutes. So it's basically on the question of ILO progress since BAPA, well, focusing a little bit what we have done with the UN Office for South-South and the UN system as a whole. So one of the important things that we've done is really the kind of reaffirming the concept, and the definitions of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation as the main modalities for working in this format post-BAPA, because sometimes there are some confusions or multiplicity of definitions. In any case, we are reaffirming the way what is written in BAPA, that South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation are the main modalities. And we also are working with sub-modalities, which are city-to-city cooperation, fragile-to-fragile, regional and sub-regional. So fragile-to-fragile is countries in situation of fragility that are cooperating. And in the case of, for example, COVID-19, of course, that also is a new fragility, as you know, the discussion now in the UN. And as you said, well, Anita, the whole pandemic is bringing the question of the right to health, but also the whole concept of humanitarian crisis. And maybe biological and sanitary crises are becoming one very key element. Regional and sub-regional cooperation are also very key, and the ILO is doing that, and also inter-regional and intra-regional. So for example, BRICS, IBSA type of cooperation. Some of the ways that we work also is that we have been doing the collections of good practices, focusing on the principles that are, in the BAPA plus 40, in particularly adaptability, mutual benefit, peer learning, innovation, among some of the criteria. We see that the role of the ILO is really a role of a broker, and this is, I think it's valid for the whole UN system. Like we are a facilitator and broker, so we're not in the driver's seat, and we're so happy that, of course, this DG Forum is targeting ministers from countries of the South and North through the triangular cooperation. So we have JICA in the showing that triangular cooperation is so important. But the role of the ILO would be really more of a knowledge broker, sharing information, facilitation of activities, collection of good practices, building partnerships, and sharing knowledge, like what we're doing here. And we also picked some of the BAPA recommendations just very quickly, as we only have 5 minutes, and saw how the ILO has adapted. So for example, in one of the BAPA recommendations for the UN system, it just provides support for the exchange of good practices on innovative policies and approaches between developing countries. And here we mentioned how we've been working on with the South-South Galaxy, for example, that was mentioned by Abdelatif, but also with our own South-South meeting point. And there is where we post our good practices from all the regions. Just for example, post-BAPA, so post-2019, we have work in Africa on networks of social protection, South-South networks, Asia and the Pacific on climate resilience, and SIDS-to-SIDS cooperation, which is Smile Island Developing States cooperation. So it's a subset of South-South cooperation for Smile Islands. Latin America and the Caribbean, for example, we have a regional initiative for Latin American Caribbean free of child labor. And the Arab states working in the whole question of refugee crisis and cross-learning between Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, and Iraq. So this is just some examples. Another set of BAPA recommendations that we extracted to show a little bit how we've been progressing is strengthen the South-South platforms and exchange of experience among sub-regional and regional groupings. And this the ILO does through a facility that we have, which is the part of their regular budget is allocated for South-South cooperation. And we decentralize to the regions the decisions through the tripartite consultations, like workers, employers, and governments consult, and they find what are their priorities and what should be done in terms of South-South to achieve decent work. And so this is one of the works in sub-regional, regional groupings. We also work with Mercosur, ASEAN, Union du Maghreb Arabe, and SADC, and other sub-regional groupings. So we've been following that. Support initiatives and data collection, coordination, dissemination, and cooperation. This we have done through our platform, which is South-South Meeting Point. I'll put the address later in the chat. If you Google South-South Meeting Point, you might find it as well. And that's where we have all our highlights, our publications, our good practices, and we link all up to normally to the Galaxy. So it's we try to do that because one of the recommendations also coming from the interagency mechanism of South-South is that all these platforms are somewhat connected, no? So we try to connect as much as we can. This refers to a little bit one of the areas of work under the UN system strategy for South-South. So one of it is increased partnerships. So we got, as an example, the work we do with BRICS, and currently we are undertaking a series of massive online courses and research studies working with a view to the Indian presidency of BRICS. So this is feeding the current work on, for example, the transition from informality to formality. And this is so much relevant in the current context as well of COVID-19, because one of the biggest impacts is this transition to, I mean, the big informalization that is happening due to the pandemic. We have some examples from the Pacific, but I think I'm not going to enter them because I have the feeling I passed my 5 minutes. But just to say that this is also on the question of small island and development states, promoting gender equality in SADC and innovative finance. So this is another area. It's true that South-South cooperation is not really seen as a funding mechanism, but sometimes it generates funds through as some kind of seed initiatives. And we have seen that we have managed to support financial inclusion of women in SADC and improve decent work through web-based platforms and training. So that is another work. And then we have also strengthened our normative frameworks. I mean, some are pre-BAPA and some are post-BAPA. So the pre-BAPA was that the fact that we wrote like a follow-up to our strategy of 2012. This was in 2018 that was approved in the governing body, but it already referred to BAPA because we had kind of a BAPA roadmap, and we have worked very actively, in fact, with UNCTAD, the South Center, and the UN Office for South-South in several pre-meetings that were, you know, even for the Geneva group of agencies to provide inputs to BAPA. The current DC strategy for the ILO for the next 5 years includes explicit references to BAPA. So I think that is relevant. And if you don't have the papers, it's on the ILO website, but it's definitely relevant for all the South-South community to know, because I think it's very important when we have explicit relevance. And finally, adaptation of COVID to all our materials and training materials to the COVID-19 pandemic. So many of our trainings were transformed into digital, face-to-face, I mean, like everybody else, but that was a big, massive effort that we did. So we also created some skills networks for the Americas, for example, for the inclusion of young people and vulnerable groups. And here we had the UN office cooperate with us. And we have some very key partnerships with the UN office that I'd like to mention as well, which is through the India Fund and Caribbean Climate Change, with UNDES on the China Peace Fund, IBSA, but this is closed, but it's still relevant to know, India, Brazil, South Africa, Haiti, Social Protection Fund, and also constant support to the interagency mechanism. And in some cases, we have done joint trainings and briefings with the South Center and also with UNCTAD, actually. And just to end, one of the things we're doing right now is that we have a new platform on SDGs, UN reform, and South-South cooperation. This is already, we have 6 modules. It's work in progress, but these first 4 modules are already online. So if somebody wants to investigate how we have done it, and we have integrated the fact that now the cooperation frameworks and the CCAs should include more and more South-South cooperation explicitly as per the strategy and the plan of action. So you can actually visit the website and see. So I'll put the, oh, my time is over. So I'll put the information here for you to look at. And of course, I am available for any questions at the end of the workshop and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anita, for presenting the work of ILO, which is really, as all the UN entities, we are in supporting South-South cooperation and facilitating for the implementation of the BAPA Plus 40 outcome document. Thank you very much. I will come back now to the first panelist, Mr. Juan Rocataglia, as I said, Minister Counselor, General Directorate of International Cooperation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade and Worship from Argentina. He will present his remarks from the host of BAPA Plus 40 country. Please, Mr. Rocataglia, the floor is yours, and you have 5 minutes as well. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Anita. Quiero señalar que estaba conectado, pero me parece que tenía el link como oyente y no como speaker, y ese fue el inconveniente. Muchas gracias a los organizadores, especialmente UNOSSC, también por supuesto a la JICA y al Banco Islámico, a quienes escuché atentamente, y me parecieron presentaciones muy interesantes. Nosotros como Argentina, como es bastante obvio, nos queríamos hacer destacar algunos elementos de la experiencia de cómo ha avanzado la implementación de los acuerdos alcanzados en BAPA 40. Mi presentación va a tratar de reforzar o de remarcar 4 conceptos principales de nuestra experiencia en el último año, en un contexto muy particular, como ya otros oradores han señalado, que es el de la pandemia y su impacto socioeconómico y ambiental. Todos entendemos perfectamente que la declaración de BAPA 40 marcó un nuevo horizonte en la cooperación internacional y es un documento orientado a la acción y con una visión de futuro clara para cumplir con las metas 2030. En el presente año nos hemos encontrado con un gran desafío, que es cómo implementar la cooperación sur-sur triangular y la cooperación al desarrollo en general en el contexto de la pandemia, y eso es un poco lo que evoca el debate hoy en día. Sin embargo, y este es uno de los principales puntos que yo quiero remarcar, es que nosotros consideramos que la importancia de la cooperación sur-sur no se da solamente en los momentos de crisis, sino que incluso en el documento de BAPA 40 se reconoce la importancia de la cooperación como en su contribución al crecimiento económico y al comercio internacional, y consideramos que incluso en aquellos momentos de expansión económica mundial y de expansión del comercio internacional, la cooperación, el desarrollo es fundamental para complementar los beneficios de ese crecimiento económico, ya que el crecimiento económico muchas veces no incluye a todos, ni incluye todas las dimensiones del bienestar. El bienestar es multidimensional, e incluye temas ambientales, temas sociales, que no se resuelven solamente con el crecimiento económico o el intercambio comercial. Por eso este es el primer concepto que queremos destacar, que la cooperación al desarrollo y la cooperación sur-sur en particular y triangular tienen este rol relevante de no solamente en los momentos críticos de pandemia, sino incluso en los momentos de expansión o de mayor bienestar global, sirve como complemento para poder alcanzar las metas 2030 y alcanzar un bienestar inclusivo para todos. El segundo punto que quiero destacar es un poco la experiencia de la pandemia, por lo menos la experiencia que nosotros hemos tenido en la Argentina. Nosotros hemos trabajado conjuntamente y muy estrechamente con la Oficina de Naciones Unidas y con las agencias, fondos y programas de Naciones Unidas en Argentina, y hemos alcanzado algunas experiencias interesantes que quiero destacar. La primera de ellas es, como muchos países hemos hecho en este año, hemos elaborado los programas país de cooperación para los próximos años, y lo hemos hecho tratando de vincular las metas globales de la Agenda 2030 con los intereses y necesidades de nuestro país, como creemos que tiene que ser, que es vincular las necesidades nacionales con las metas globales. Y lo hemos hecho de manera muy exitosa. Y de allí han surgido algunas experiencias muy interesantes, y experiencias que incluso están dentro de los mandatos del PAVA, que es la generación de alianzas multiactor y el vínculo con el sector privado. Y aquí yo escuché muy atentamente la presentación que hizo el representante del Banco Islámico, y nuestra experiencia es que la cooperación para el desarrollo, la cooperación sur-sur, la cooperación triangular, uno de los principales desafíos que encuentra es encontrar las líneas de financiamiento para que esta cooperación pueda ser implementada. Líneas de financiamiento que muchas veces surgen de los países, pero que tienen que ser complementadas con el sector privado, los bancos de desarrollo, y eso es algo para nosotros que consideramos fundamental, además de las líneas de financiamiento de cooperación sur-sur que tengan los países, e incluso, y otro mandato del PAVA, que los organismos multilaterales también tengan y incrementen sus líneas de financiamiento para la cooperación y para la cooperación sur-sur, y en particular el sistema de Naciones Unidas. Y la experiencia que yo quiero traer a colación es que en muchos casos hemos trabajado en conjunto, tanto el sistema multilateral de Naciones Unidas en Argentina, como con las empresas y los intereses, las necesidades particulares del Estado argentino, y lo hemos hecho de manera exitosa. Y yo creo que eso marca un poco quizás el futuro de la cooperación, y quizás eso nos permita implementar de manera efectiva muchos de los mandatos del PAVA 40. El tercer punto que quiero destacar es un poco repasar algunos de los principales mandatos del PAVA 40, que el primero es el fortalecimiento institucional, la mejora de la eficacia, justamente mejorar las alianzas inclusivas para el desarrollo sostenible, el compartir prácticas y experiencias en materia de ciencia y tecnología. Esto es fundamental, porque esto tiene un impacto estratégico en el desarrollo de los países, sobre todo en los países en desarrollo. Fortalecer el sistema de Naciones Unidas, inclusive lo que acabo de señalar, es tratar de que incrementar las líneas de financiamiento en muchos de sus fondos, programas y agencias para la cooperación. Y finalmente, tratar de algún modo, confluir en metodologías comparables entre las diferentes regiones y países para dimensionar el impacto de la cooperación sur-sur y la cooperación triangular y la cooperación al desarrollo en general en el desarrollo de nuestros países. El cuarto punto que quiero señalar es que la Argentina va a asumir a comienzos de mayo la presidencia del Comité de Alto Nivel para la Cooperación Sur-Sur de las Naciones Unidas. Nuestras expectativas es justamente trabajar con los diferentes grupos regionales y los diferentes países en la discusión, en mantener un debate amplio sobre estos temas, en cómo llevar adelante las experiencias que nosotros estamos compartiendo aquí para poder implementar los objetivos de VAPA 40. Esa es nuestra meta, y invitamos como Argentina a todos los países y regiones a poder trabajar, y a UNOSSC, con quien hemos estado trabajando conjuntamente en la agenda, y ahí quiero agradecer, al margen agradecer a nuestra misión en Nueva York, a la embajadora Skef y a su equipo, que ha estado trabajando arduamente en conjunto con nosotros para poder lograr una presidencia efectiva en este sentido. Finalmente, como conclusión, quiero señalar que consideramos que la cooperación, vinculándolo con lo que yo comencé a decir al comienzo, que es no solamente en los momentos de crisis, sino en los momentos de expansión económica, la cooperación al desarrollo tiene un rol fundamental en los desafíos que la humanidad enfrenta actualmente, y va a tener un rol crucial en lo que podríamos llamar evitar el impacto negativo de lo que algunos denominan el techo de cristal que se nos presenta como civilización, y poder lograr que el bienestar que en los últimos 200 años la humanidad ha logrado pueda expandirse a toda la humanidad, incluyendo a todos, tratando de que este crecimiento sea sostenible y evitando los impactos negativos que ha tenido ese crecimiento. Como dije antes, la cooperación al desarrollo puede ser crucial para lograr superar ese denominado para unos académicos techo de cristal. Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rucataglia. Muchas gracias. It was very interesting really to hear, and we are really share your views that South-South cooperation is a key issue really in all times, and also that importance that trade, technology, innovation, and other issues placed on supporting and also on facilitating South-South cooperation. I will invite now Ms. Ama Bradford Arthur. She's Senior Partnership Officer on the South-South and Triangular Cooperation, Global Engagement, Partnership and Resource Mobilization Division, External Relations Department at the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. Ms. Bradford Arthur, the floor is yours, and you have also 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Anita. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be here for IFAD to present to you a number of areas, the strides that we've made since before and since BAPA Plus 40, what critical areas still need attention. I'd like also to touch on the success factors that can be prioritized in order to accelerate progress. And then finally, I would just like to give a brief overview that IFAD thinks the development cooperation agencies can play in the process of enhancing South-South and triangular cooperation as an important cooperation modality. Now, for the International Fund for Agricultural Development, which you all know is both a UN specialized agency and a public credit rated international financial institution, SSTC is an extremely important modality that we're using, we're leveraging to enhance the country level programs and expand our partnerships with a broader set of actors. I would say that our commitment to SSTC is noted in our strategic framework, which spans the period 2016 to 2025. And within this framework, we have highlighted SSTC as a modality to enhance country-level programs, to expand partnerships, and to increase access to knowledge. I would consider that our corporate agenda has focused on main priorities, which concern mainstreaming SSTC in our operations, promoting knowledge exchanges, strengthening and broadening our partnerships around SSTC, and improving the tracking and monitoring of the contribution of SSTC to development results. Now, IFAD, as you know, implements programs and projects in line with national governments. And so to ensure that we make SSTC in IFAD's operations, we have established in 2019 specific guidelines to both assist and facilitate the incorporation of SSTC in country strategies. And since this has led to the development of clear SSTC narratives for the country strategic programs of 9 countries. For example, in Morocco, we have had the Atlas Mountains Rural Development Project, where we have seen IFAD's program in Morocco collaborate with La Côte d'Ivoire, with Madagascar and Tanzania for knowledge exchanges as well as technical cooperation. COVID-19, the challenges of this pandemic dominate our development interactions. IFAD, to this end, has launched the Rural Poor Stimulus Facility that is aimed at kickstarting and mobilizing funds to support countries as they deal with the fallout from the pandemic. And in this light, SSTC is an integral part of IFAD's overall response. So the facility that we have set up with the support of the People's Republic of China has funded since 2018 13 projects to the tune of over $6.7 million. And to support IFAD's overall support to mitigating the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have the third call for proposals for this facility, which are specifically targeted at designating up to $4 million of funds to support the generation and exchange of innovative solutions, of approaches and methodologies that can be of value in the current as well as a post-COVID recovery period. I have to note also that IFAD is looking to broaden and increase its support to SSTC projects by establishing a multi-donor facility dedicated specifically to SSTC, which will source contributions from member states and partner organizations. I know I'm limited for time, so I'll try to be as quick as possible. IFAD has also promoted knowledge exchange. It's a main focus of SSTC strategy, where we have seen since BAPA Plus 40, over 30 knowledge sharing and capacity building workshops that have been held on sustainable agriculture, on rural finance, on water management and market access. We consider that we have greatly benefited from the institutional setup that has seen the establishment of 3 SSTC and knowledge centers in Addis Ababa, in Beijing and Brazil, which together have highlighted and enhanced their capacity to engage in the field, to identify initiatives on knowledge sharing, as well as our own grants and investment programs that we can bring together and highlight on the platform that we have established called the Rural Solutions Portal. It's a web-based platform that is dedicated to smallholder agriculture. IFAD has also organized or participated in a series of regional and international conferences to share knowledge, lessons, and experiences around strengthening and broadening SSTC partnerships, such as with the Brazil-Africa Forum and the International Seminar on Global Poverty Reduction Partnerships. I have to note also the partnerships that have been broadened in SSTC. Besides being a member of the working group led by the UN Office for South-South Cooperation on the development of the UN system-wide strategy, we have also worked with the Rome-based agencies for joint collaborations on the ground, where we are now piloting a project for the local production of fortified cassava flour in Congo. And the three Rome-based agencies are looking at how we can leverage our respective competencies and comparative advantages to develop national standards for cassava, as well as an evidence-based business plan for both its production and its sale in national and regional markets. Now, we are also strengthening our partnerships with developing countries and agencies through letters of intent and memoranda of understanding, for example, with Brazil, with the Islamic Development Bank. We're looking also to extend this to Thailand and to Indonesia. And we have a number of agreements also running with the Alliance for the Green Revolution in Africa and other partners, especially in the form of business-to-business linkages. We have had a constant pushback and a requirement from our member states to ensure that we are able to effectively assess the contribution of South-South and triangular cooperation to our development efforts. So to this end, IFAD is developing a corporate database on SSTC to allow the monitoring and reporting on SSTC activities, as well as with the RBAs, with the Rome-based agencies. We are working on developing monitoring and evaluation methodology that aims at promoting a qualitative assessment of SSTC and its contribution to development results, particularly in the areas where we have a mandate in agriculture, in rural development, in food security and nutrition. We have found that whilst partnerships with developing countries show satisfactory progress overall, we need to work harder on effective engagement with developed countries, because it is important that the targeted partnerships that we are looking to establish are actively explored with developed countries, so that
panelists to conclude. I will kindly ask the panelists to conclude, so we pass to the interactive question and answer session, please.
Right. I will try and be as quick as possible. Okay. So I just wanted to note the opportunities that we have to accelerate progress, which is that we're looking at ensuring that the amount of resources mobilized through SSTC should grow, not to be used by the North as a pretext to diminish their own share of development assistance, but to complement the envelope of resources available for development. We would look at SSTC shifting its focus to agriculture, to nutrition, and to rural development, especially to support the resilience of poor rural people in the face of such challenges as COVID. And we want to look at the modalities of SSTC evolving to ensure that there's an increasingly broad South-South investment and trade. And one last area, Ms. Moderator, that I would like to consider the role that development agencies play in the process of enhancing this area is we need to promote rural productivity. We need to look at how the UN and IFAD can play a role in bringing together producers and practitioners. We need to address climate change. We need to introduce new technologies, especially ICT for development, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things. We need to strengthen farmers' organizations. In a nutshell, we believe that all these activities will contribute to the goal of IFADs and the UN systems of driving inclusive and sustainable rural transformation, in which all countries and all actors can support inclusive rural transformation as the unique proposition to the 2030 agenda and to the effectiveness of SSTC post-BAPA 40. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this comprehensive presentation. And now we will go very quickly to the question and answer interactive discussion. I will kindly ask the participants to raise their hands and or write in the chat. And please, when you intervene, introduce yourself, provide your name, your title, organization, or country if you consider appropriate, and then please, your intervention should be very short and very, very concise. Thank you. I don't see here any sound. If the colleagues from the Office of South-South Cooperation could help me here, I don't see any. While we wait, perhaps we can continue giving 1 minute to each panelist to address what I think Mr. Rocataglia, he talked, and also about the importance and the role of the development cooperation agencies, the key role that they play in promoting and also in supporting and facilitating South-South cooperation. I would kindly ask the panelists to give their views in 1 minute, very concise. So I will start with Mr. Rocataglia, please. Hello? 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 Can you hear me? So we will come back.
Hola.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Bueno, voy a profundizar un poco el concepto. Muchas gracias por recogerlo. Voy a poner ejemplos concretos, habiendo escuchado recién a la representante del FIDA. En muchas ocasiones, la cooperación triangular y la cooperación multiactor con el sector privado, que consideramos que resulta fundamental para llevar adelante proyectos de cooperación, como dije antes, que atiendan los objetivos tanto de la Agenda 2030 como los intereses nacionales de los países que reciben la cooperación. Y allí a veces uno encuentra la dificultad de cuestiones de financiamiento e incluso cuestiones de procedimiento, reglamentación, que hacen difícil o ralentizan llevar adelante proyectos de cooperación triangular, por ejemplo, entre la Argentina y un organismo X que no quiero nombrar a ninguno en particular, pero la Argentina es un país que está muy interesado en trabajar con las agencias, sea con PNUD, con el FIDA, con FAO, triangularmente. De hecho lo hacemos mucho en el mundo, lo hacemos con UNICEF, lo hacemos con FAO, lo hemos hecho con FIDA, lo hacemos con algunos organismos panamericanos como el JICA y OPS, eso iba a ser para mi presentación en las Américas, pero consideramos que se puede avanzar mucho más aún si las agencias del sistema multilateral tienen sistemas más flexibles y ágiles para llevar adelante esta cooperación, y a su vez se pueden nutrir de financiamientos con líneas de cooperación sur-sur y triangular. Y el financiamiento considero también que tanto por parte de los países como por parte de las agencias internacionales, y ya concluyo, sé que es un minuto, a veces quizás se puede encontrar en el sector privado a través del concepto de responsabilidad social empresarial, en muchas conferencias últimamente que hemos participado. Esto es algo que se está debatiendo, muchos países europeos y latinoamericanos estamos tratando de avanzar. No es fácil, hay que sistematizarlo, requiere muchas reglamentaciones, pero consideramos que el futuro de la cooperación, como complemento a lo que se ha venido dando hasta ahora, puede ser ese el camino para fortalecerla y para poder implementar de manera efectiva, como dije antes, los objetivos de VAPA 40, y aquí concluyo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, and it's very important really to address these key issues, and I think our colleagues from IFAD and ILO will have some opportunity also to say on this issue of creating and facilitating partnerships. I have one question for ILO, and I will kindly ask Anita to address this question. It's in the chat. I don't know if you can see, it's a question to ILO. The COVID-19 pandemic is causing much disruption to employment, deepening the economic crisis. From the ILO perspective, what can be done through South-South cooperation to recover from this particular effect of the pandemic, which can also affect your ability to achieve the BAPA plus 40 recommendation? I will kindly ask Anita to address in 1 minute. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's impossible to address this question in 1 minute. But in any case, thanks, Anita, and thanks for the Islamic Bank, I think, who asked the question. There's a lot of work being done in terms of COVID-19 response and adaptation, and of course, considering that South-South cooperation is a means to deal with some of the effects of the crisis. So on one hand, as I mentioned, we had adaptation of all our trainings and training of trainers and everything that is dealing with workers' rights into a digital format. So on one hand, of course, it has increased the audience largely to, from hundreds to thousands of people. But of course, this does not substitute any face-to-face arrangement. On the other hand, we have also there are specific responses, which are, of course, in terms of funding, has been more proactive from the north, of course, but from the south, we have also had some projects which are actually targeting child labor and some adaptation, both from Brazil and China, for example. So there is this integration of the COVID-19 dimension in new projects, one on combating child labor and one on skills development. And then just to agree with the point that yes, COVID-19 can, hamper the ability to achieve BAPA plus 40 recommendations, because it's much harder to create networks when you don't meet face-to-face. On the other hand, there is the advantage of this kind of digitalization and the fourth sector, kind of wave that is increasing enormously. But it does leave, of course, many of the really most vulnerable populations sometimes out if they cannot reach any internet mechanisms, or especially in rural areas. But we have been investing largely in continuing the work on, for example, skills adaptation, training for skills recognition, and also dealing with questions such as migration, because all the problems that existed before COVID, they continue, but they're aggravated. So child labor continue, trafficking continues, discrimination of migrant workers continue, and then the COVID-19 is an aggravation factor. So we do work with all this simultaneously. I think I already passed my 1 minute, but anyway, just to say that we can also be in touch by email. I think I put it up there somewhere, and I can provide more examples. And also I put the platform that we are sharing information, which is the south-south.net. This is in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, Anita, for addressing the question of the Islamic Development Bank, Mr. Ahmed Farouk Liken. I will give Ms. Amma Branford Actor 1 minute just to also conclude, and perhaps you can mention 2 or 3 key points that we need to focus in order to accelerate progress in the implementation of the BAPA plus 40 outcome document, although of the difficult times that we are facing and the challenges that the Global South is facing on this issue of the pandemic. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Anita. I will try and stay within the 1 minute. So, of course, if I just piggyback on the question asked by the Islamic Development Bank, we do have the Rural Poor Stimulus Facility that IFAD has launched. But more than that, we'd also like to interrogate a number of areas of discussion to look at the ways in which we as IFAD, as well as partner development cooperation agencies, can play in the process of enhancing SSTC. I touched very briefly on them at the beginning. Let me see if I can do more within this 1 minute. So one of the questions is, how can the UN and the IFIs play a role in bringing together producers, practitioners, and researchers from southern countries, for example, that have achieved high levels in crop yields with those that record the lowest? What role can the UN and the IFIs play in facilitating productivity and investments between developing countries, for example, in agricultural machinery, in fertilizer production, in research and development? What can we do? How can we improve the ways in which we can support the exchange of successful climate adaptation strategies and technologies? For example, those that relate to water and resource saving techniques, drought resistance, salt tolerant crops, climate smart agriculture. How can we support the SIDS and the other countries that are at risk from climate challenges to be more resilient? Can we, for example, initiate sub-regional climate adaptation networks that's for countries that share common characteristics? And then the Internet of Things. How can we support the spread of innovative, resource-saving, and productivity-enhancing technologies that are generated in the Global South? Robots, drones, artificial intelligence, agriculture. How can the IFIs provide financial support for the support of South-South rural technology centers, such as those in line with SDG target 17.6? And finally, how will it be possible for us to establish platforms for exchange and cooperation between national, regional, and global farmers organizations? For us in IFAD, we have established the Rural Solutions Platform, where we are aggregating solutions. We are working with the South-South Galaxy of the UNOSSC. Can we look for a way that is more uniform in supporting the knowledge exchange and the experiences and promoting agricultural trade, especially bringing in the private sector? For us, these are the areas that we feel would really support the inclusive and sustainable rural transformation that we are looking for in our work and in the work of the UN system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the 3 distinguished panelists. We had a very good discussion and very meaningful discussion on different issues such as trade, technology, climate change, and other issues as well. And also to conclude, I would like to thank this opportunity and also invite all of you to see our website, of UNCTAD website. We produce 7 flagship reports, including digital economy, globalization, investment, and transport and other issues as well, with focus on Africa and LDCs and other countries, where we address that issue that has been highlighted here, and what is the role of South-South cooperation, as it is one of the key areas of our work at UNCTAD. We thank you very much for this discussion. I think there are a lot of ideas and also positive issues that we can take into account on how to build a very resilient society in the South that could be able to face these challenges that the pandemic posed to all of us. I think that's important, and the UN as a system, and with the participation of all the agencies, we will continue supporting and facilitating South-South cooperation and to building a better and inclusive society in the South. Thank you very much, and I will handle now the moderation to Tariq.
No, thank you very much, Anita. I really appreciate your effective moderation of this important session, during which we have heard important insights from the host country, Argentina, but also from other colleagues of the UN system. Argentina, of course, continues leading and its leadership of South-South cooperation by presiding over the high-level committee on South-South cooperation. We have had a very good relationship, working relationship with Argentina during the preparation of the BAPA Plus 40 and the organization of the BAPA Plus 40, and Ignacio was part of that team. And we look forward to continuing our work with you for the organization of the session of the HLC. That is the first one, the high-level committee on South-South cooperation. For the colleagues who don't know what is HLC, high-level committee on South-South cooperation is the main policy-making body in the UN for South-South and triangular cooperation. And Argentina will be chairing and presiding over this session of the HLC. So yeah, I really appreciate the fact that you highlighted the role and the importance of public-private partnership. And we have a very fantastic example, which is the development of the COVID-19 vaccine. I think this really, this partnership has helped in developing an effective and in a very swiftly way the vaccine in order to face this challenge. I think this is an example that should be emulated. This is an example that should also be replicated, because this is how we can get to a very effective partnership. But at the same time, we have to make sure that there's fair and equitable access to this vaccine. We are also happy that what we have seen, that BAPA Plus 40 recommendations, or BAPA Plus 40, has become a compass for all actors and stakeholders in South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. We are working with member states, but at the same time, we are working with the UN system. And one of the missions of the UN Office of South-South cooperation is how to support the UN entities to mainstream South-South cooperation, triangular cooperation in their strategic planning document and program. And I think, and this is an important element, how they can use South-South cooperation in supporting the effort of member states to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The reason why we have created that platform, and also based on the requests and the recommendations of member states, the inter-agency mechanism for South-South cooperation that we are coordinating. And this is a important platform that helps us all in order to coordinate, but most importantly to discuss and to come up with important elements, strategic elements, how we can conduct South-South and triangular cooperation with member states and other stakeholders. And a good example is, of course, the UN system-wide strategy for South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. And something that's really appreciated also is that I have seen through the chat box that contacts are already started to be established. I saw the message from our colleague Alia from the Islamic Chamber of Commerce contacting our colleague Ama from IFAD for maybe potential partnership. I think this is the spirit and this is the aim of this DG Forum, and I'd like to thank you very much for this important insight. Thank you very much, colleagues, for this fantastic panel. And now I have the pleasure to move on to the next session that will be dedicated to the challenges and opportunities posed to South-South cooperation, triangular cooperation, but the COVID-19. And I have the pleasure to hand over to Dr. Correa to moderate this session. Dr. Correa, please, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Tariq. Thank you to the organizer for the invitation to the South Center to attend, participate this very important forum. So it's not the first time I participate in. So I think this forum is a very important tool in order to further promote South-South and triangular cooperation. As you know, the South Center is in itself a manifestation of the South cooperation. It has been set up by developing countries. It works for developing countries. And certainly one of the important areas of work for the South Center is South-South and triangular cooperation. In particular, we are very proud of our cooperation with the UN Office on South-South Cooperation and with the Islamic Development Bank. We are working on the basis of the concept that the Islamic Development Bank developed about the national ecosystem for South cooperation. And we are engaged in improving the institutional capacity of developing countries in order to be part of the South cooperation, both as suppliers as also as beneficiaries or recipients of this cooperation. So in the context of this particular panel, let me just make a couple of observations. The first one, as it is very well known to everybody in this meeting, developing countries have suffered a lot from COVID-19. In particular, this has affected the poor and the most vulnerable part of the population. And there is a need to use all tools available in order to try and improve the situation of developing countries in terms of health, in terms of recovery of the economy. And certainly South-South cooperation is one of these important tools. As we all know, the second observation is, we all know that the scope and intensity of South-South cooperation has grown enormously in the last 20 years or so. This was very well reflected in the outcome document of BAPA plus 40 and discussion themselves of BAPA plus 40. So it's quite clear that South-South cooperation can be a very important instrument in order to address COVID-19 and beyond COVID-19. Of course, we should not focus only on COVID-19. Hopefully, there will be some control on this pandemic during this year or in the coming months. But then South-South cooperation needs to continue playing an important role in supporting development strategies of developing countries. In the context of COVID-19, let me just give you some examples of how South-South cooperation has operated and been important. I will just mention examples. There are many other examples of South cooperation during this sad period of COVID-19. One is, for instance, the case of Cuba. Cuba sent more than 1,200 doctors to other countries, to other developing countries, including some developed countries. There has been also South-North cooperation. And there has been a strong expression of solidarity and fraternity. In terms of vaccines, in vaccines distribution, we may consider countries that are producers of vaccines and countries which are not producers of vaccines, but which have however, also engaged in South-South cooperation. Among the first category, of course, we have India. India has donated vaccines to a number of to its neighboring countries and also to countries beyond the borders of India, such as the case of Caribbean countries, Guyana and Jamaica. This is in addition to any exports on commercial basis that can be made from India, as you know, is a major producer of vaccines today, of vaccines for COVID-19. China is another example. China has donated vaccines to 53 countries in accordance to the available reports. Also, China is a major provider of vaccines on a sale basis, commercial basis, to many developing countries, which are not getting access to the Western vaccines, which has, as you know, developed countries have hoarded a last volume of vaccines in excess of what they actually need. And therefore, developing countries are playing a major role as producers of vaccines in making available the prevention to the COVID-19 in a large number of developing countries. And in some cases, this is the only supply developing countries can get. In the second category of non-producers of vaccines, which have also shown this solidarity, we may include the case of Chile, for instance. Chile, which is very, very advanced in the vaccination program, has donated vaccines to other Latin American countries, to Paraguay and Ecuador. in order to help these countries to face, in particular, the prevention of COVID-19 for health workers, and it has been a very important contribution. I also like to mention another example of South-South cooperation. This is the case of Argentina and Mexico. Argentina and Mexico are producing jointly the vaccine by AstraZeneca, by Oxford University AstraZeneca. So this is another example of a joint cooperation, also with inputs from, in this case, foreign companies. So there are many examples, but this just shows the potential of South-South cooperation. I have read some commentaries in the press indicating that the vaccine supply by some major producers of vaccines in developed countries is a case of vaccines diplomacy. I think this is denigrating somehow the importance of this South-South cooperation, as there is a saying that a friend in need is a friend indeed. I think that South-South cooperation has taken place at the right time and in a manner that has helped a lot the recipient parties of vaccine. I didn't mention also the case of Pakistan. Pakistan donated all the masks that were in the inventory of the hospitals of Pakistan to China when the COVID-19 started. So there are so many cases that show how much South-South cooperation can help to address a crisis like this. But we have a fantastic panel to deal with the opportunities, the challenges, and the trends in relation to South-South cooperation in the context of COVID-19. So I'd like to let them to make their comments. We haven't got too much time, so we expect each of the panelists to make a presentation for about 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, let's say. I will be somehow strict because we need to end the session in time. Is it, Tariq? But of course, we expect a lot from the presentations. So this panel will make a number of presentations about the role of international, regional organizations and also think tanks. Not only their roles, but we are interested in knowing how they conceptualize South-South cooperation in the context of COVID-19 or similar crisis situation. So just to start, then I hope, yes, Yuko is there. I will start with Mrs. Yuko Suzuki Naab. She is Global Policy Advisor, Effective Development Cooperation, Effectiveness Group, Bureau for Policy and Program Support in the UNDP. Yuko, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity and the invitation to speak at this forum. I will actually share a screen and I hope you'll be able to see it. So I think, as you know, I mean, the UN Secretary General actually reiterated that this COVID pandemic was more than a health crisis. It is actually a human crisis. It is a socioeconomic, humanitarian, peace, and a human rights crisis. And now I think 1 full year into the pandemic, some light is in the, at the tunnel, at the end of the tunnel with vaccine rolled out. But many countries are still haven't really received a single dose. So there are more to do and there's much things that are needed. The most vulnerable have suffered the most. Those left behind are being left even farther behind. A sharp decline in the global trade and plunging FDI, a fall in remittance. I mean, all that could actually really push up to 150 million people into extreme poverty by the end of 2021. So building forward better requires a whole of government, a whole of society, and a whole of the world approach driven by the solidarity and strengthening the resilience. Now, South-South cooperations and triangle cooperation. I mean, the COVID-19 highlighted this indispensable role of international cooperation, including South-South and triangle cooperation. And I think, as the Mr. Correa had already kind of indicated, there are quite good sort of solidarity that are coming in to really help countries. Countries in the global south have incredibly supportive to each other during the pandemic, with more visible and intensive South-South cooperation in the COVID-19 response and recovery. According to the recent survey by UNDP Africa, many African countries have actually used or made use of horizontal exchange and transfer of know-how and technology with the other southern countries and partners. I mean, one of the examples is an AUC that established a particular sort of a fund to really support African CDC to be able to, respond and then, be able to actually help countries in testing and, providing the guidance and so on. Now, on the UNDP side, South-South and Triangle cooperation has become also an important feature of the UNDP's COVID-19 response, accounting for about 18% of all COVID-19 projects in 2020. More than 60% of them are related to health, crisis management and governance. I have just shown some example on the slide, and I wouldn't go into detail on that, but the amount of new knowledge generated worldwide since the beginning of the pandemic actually really represents a unique opportunity for South-South cooperation. Now, I just like to highlight just a few trends as we look at the South-South cooperation and Triangle cooperation in the era of COVID-19. First of all, the transformative power of South-South and Triangle cooperation for digitalization. COVID-19 changed means of engagement with teleschooling, teleworking, digital payments. During the pandemic, there's a stronger attention on the digital economy, the digital governance, digital institution. But at the same time, there's also an increasing digital divide that is of a significant concern. But the South-South and Triangle cooperation with its scope and modality way beyond technical cooperation now to the trade, investment, infrastructures, and the connectivity has a significant potential to help addressing the digital divide, sharing best practices, and promoting innovation. The second area is that there's a greater potential for South-South cooperation to address climate change. Climate change is recognized by many people around the world as a serious crisis as COVID-19 in the long term. The measures to recover from the COVID-19 crisis offer a unique chance to actually broaden green economy recovery, investing in renewable energy. But at the same time, there's also a gaps and constraints faced by many countries, like access to finance, technology innovation, partnerships, capacity deficits, and also there's an appropriate policy reform that are needed to address that. But the South-South cooperation, has quite a good potential to narrow this gap, addressing countries narrowing this gap. The third area is that the multifaceted impacts of the pandemic itself, but also building back better, require multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder response covering both short-term and long-term objectives. And this necessitates strengthened coordination across various ministries, departments, and agencies to plan, implement, monitor, evaluate South-South Triangle cooperations and ensure that those are aligned with the national sustainable development plans of countries. The South-South cooperation, is already evolving to become more inclusive, more multi-directional, and with much wider stakeholders. And we know that the many countries are already began or strengthened the stronger institutional frameworks and the capacity for managing South-South and Triangle cooperation. But with the considerable varieties and the diversity that exists across countries in the global south, there is an opportunity for peer learning and mutual learning. One of the area that might be quite interesting to look into is how to mainstream risk assessments and management into the programming and projects of the South-South cooperation. Now, looking forward, there's a significant power of knowledge and solution sharing to build back better and towards 2030 agenda. Now, the South-South and Triangle cooperation is at the heart of UNDP support to help countries respond and recover from COVID-19, but also achieve their sustainable development goals. UNDP has in the South-South cooperation as a role as a capacity development supporter, as a knowledge broker, and also as a partnership facilitator. And considering trends and the amount of new knowledge generated worldwide, we look really forward to work with partners and countries to identify, promote, share innovative solutions, best practices, an experience and knowledge, but also to support, strengthen the institutional framework for managing South-South cooperations in many countries. And we really hope to do that together with the UN agency, of course, with the UN Office of South-South Cooperation in a more impactful way and in line with the UN system-wide strategy on South-South cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuko, for your comments and observation. And so maybe at the end of the session, we may come back to some of your insightful observations on the current situation and the potential of South-South cooperation. So let me now move to Ana Fernandez. She's the head of the Foresight Outreach and Policy Reform Unit in Development Cooperation and Development, OECD. Ana, nice to see you.
Thank you, Carlos. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation, and also to see so many familiar faces and friends. In times of COVID, probably we should use more the technologies, as Yuko is saying, to partner more and to talk more to each other to move this agenda forward. So this is a good opportunity to do that. And thank you very much to UN South-South Office, also to JICA and ISDB. We work closely with all of you. I'm very pleased to also inform you that we signed last year a MOU with the UN South-South Office and the OECD, and we are very pleased to announce that. We also work closely with ISDB in terms of supporting the reinforcement and the strengthening of national systems for triangle cooperation. And of course, JICA is a partner in our OECD constellation in our Development Assistance Committee. It goes without saying. So very pleased to see you all. I think this is a very important discussion because COVID clearly highlighted some of the challenges that we already were facing and probably exacerbated those challenges, but the challenges were already there. And at the same time, it gave us probably an opportunity to rethink the way we are approaching development cooperation. And I think this could be a very good opportunity to talk, as Yuko was also mentioning, to some trends, but also to see how South-Southern Triangle cooperation can be part of the solution. And how can we scale up these modalities to be part of the solution? So reshaping development cooperation and focusing on opportunities. We all know that COVID brought and create a huge impact in the implementation of the SDGs. And just to bring you another data from the OECD on our development cooperation report, on the financing gap, we already were lacking behind on the financing needed to implement the SDGs. We were lacking behind before COVID in 2.5 trillion. But now the last estimates that we did, we are lacking behind 4.2 trillion. Only in 2020, and this number probably is going to increase. So this is a fact. And how can South-Southern Triangle cooperation also help tackling the need for financing for development? The other fact is also that we know that there will be a huge impact on the way we address our institutional setting to collaborate together. There was and there is this risk of shifting funds and resources to national priorities instead of international global public goods. How much can we balance that challenge, and how much can we bring opportunities to do things differently? How can we move from a hardware development cooperation for a software development cooperation that is much more faster, efficient, effective, and impactful? And I think that's the challenge that we all face. And that's the challenge also that we at the OECD try to address by bringing triangle cooperation to the center of some of the debates with our donors. We want to bring triangle cooperation to be assessed and mainstreamed in the programming and in the to-do of the donors. So it should not be just a commitment, and it's very important to have commitments, and we are very glad that we had BAPA 40+ commitment and outcome document, but now we need to implement them. So how can we implement and mainstream this modality of triangle cooperation across the different practices, including in our donor countries? And we are working with them in a knowledge sharing exercise that several of you were invited to participate, and we're very glad to invite other colleagues to join us to try to see how can we learn together in a way that triangle cooperation is real mainstreaming in the actions, the programming, the projects that we do across the different sectors. And here I would say we also need a sector-wide approach to triangle cooperation, not just a global approach to triangle cooperation. So these knowledge sharing exercises intends to bring that joint learning together, but we are also doing other things at the OECD. And I feel that this is a good momentum, Tariq, also to report back on what we did since BAPA 40+, to tackle also these new challenges of COVID, but even beyond, because we also committed to implement other things in BAPA. So we at the OECD, we bring analysis on triangle cooperation, data and evidence, repository of projects. We foster dialogue also among partners, and we do a lot of advocacy and put forward a lot of research to explain what is the value added of triangle cooperation also to our main stakeholders and members, but also to engage with all of you to learn more about what we can do. So this is in a nutshell what we do. And what did we learn in the past year? We learned that triangle cooperation is not a niche. All the regions of the world are using it, and it's being scaled up. We also learned that more DAC donors are engaging on it, and that's very positive. And we also learned that triangle cooperation should be an investment in the partnership itself, because it's not only about doing projects together. It's about investing in a relationship, in a partnership, in a trustful partnership. And this is something that a lot of countries around the world had pay a lot of attention and value, but not only countries. We also learned during these last 2 years that we need to bring on board on triangle cooperation what we are doing also on the bilateral multilateral scope with civil society, with private sector. And we just had a very good joint paper done with Professor Sachin and RIS, and we launched it, and it was a success, and we are very glad to do that together. So it's a concrete example that we can put our minds together to foster some concrete action points. So going back to the challenges, and I'm going to close, Mr. Moderator, very soon. Going back to the challenges, we see it 3 main challenges to address, and we see always opportunities to bring South-South and triangle cooperation to address those challenges. One is about implementation of the SDGs and how much we really want to move for a global public goods agenda. How do we want to move from localization to globalization in the development cooperation setting? And how can we move from working at the ground on South-South and triangle cooperation to influence the global public goods agenda at the global level? So this political dimension, we see it as a trend, we see it as a challenge, but we also see it as an opportunity. An opportunity also to change the landscape of multilateralism, because multilateralism is in the process of changing. The governance of multilateral aid is in the process of changing, and this can be positive, and this can be a way of bringing the voices from the ground to the global level. And can triangle and South-South cooperation facilitate that dialogue at the political level? The other point is also about the institutional framework of all the agencies of the world. The point that I mentioned about moving from hardware to software. Today we know that if we want to respond to the challenges that every development country, every developing country is facing, it's about scaling up innovation. It's about sharing knowledge. It's about being efficient, and it's about also being impactful. So how can we move from an approach where we go on step by step to an approach that we use every technology available, every knowledge available, every innovation available to really save some time. And that's the big question that we need probably to tackle together. What would be the way of putting all this knowledge together? Finally, I would say that it's very important also to foster partnerships beyond the usual suspects and to create fundamental trust beyond the usual suspects. Our responsibility as OECD, of course, is to work with our members at the OECD to engage them more on triangle cooperation. That was a call that we received in BAPA, and we are very conscious of that. We will continue to work with our members to do that. But we also feel that there is a lot of interest in partnering with others. And I would like just to flag before I conclude the great work that the Global Partnership Initiative on Effective Triangle Cooperation is doing. Several of us are involved on this global partnership, and there will be a paper coming up from that global partnership exactly about how can partnerships be promoted in the context of COVID and being scaled up. So I would say, this is also another partnership that is working to foster these so innovative solutions for development. I would stop here, and I would be very happy to hear from all of you. And of course, because this is mandatory, and probably some of you already heard that from me, I need to finish with this big slogan from the OECD, which is also what we believe strongly, which is about, looking forward to working with all of you to build back better, greener, and more sustainable for better triangle and South-South policies for better lives. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Anna, for this very insightful presentation too. And maybe we will have time to discuss after the two remaining interventions, some of the concepts you have mentioned, in particular, the emphasis on the global public goods, which I think is very important to be actually implemented. So now I have the pleasure of giving the floor to our next speaker, is Mr. Nene Benhai Aisa. He's the Executive Director of Partners in Population and Development. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you. Mr. Adel Abdelatif, Director, UN Office of South-South Cooperation. Mr. Naoki Ando, Director General, Operation Strategy and Development. Japan International Cooperation Agency. Mr. Riyad Ragid, Acting Director, Islamic Development Bank. Colleagues, friends, excellencies, distinguished panelists, and participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Dhaka, Bangladesh, headquarters of Partners in Population and Development. And I'm delighted to be here today participating with to this important forum for the second time since my first participation was in November 2018 in New York. Unfortunately, at this time, we are keeping our distance, and but it's good to meet again, during which I represented Partners in Population and Development, my organization, and the experiences we have in promoting South-South and triangular cooperation among its 27 member countries, representing more than 60% of the world population, with all the challenging and emerging issues of reproductive health, family planning, population, and development. And I remember this 2018 forum offered me a great opportunity to initiate discussions with the former director of UN Office of South Cooperation, Mr. Yoki, with the aim to consolidate the partnership with PPD. And we have agreed to sign an MOU, which was signed in September 2019 in Tunis at the International Interministerial Conference on South-South Cooperation in Population and Development. And this conference, wish to say a few words about it, which is organized annually by PPD, of course, with the support of one of its member countries as a host country, and also with UNFPA, United Nations Fund for Population, which is a forum for policy makers, leaders, experts, and health professionals from governments, IGO, NGO, academia, development partners, to discuss progress on the implementation of global health and population matters agenda and seek best possible options on how to promote South-South and triangular cooperation, not only among our PPD member countries, but also with other developing countries and also the Global South. And I wish that this year's conference will be joined by colleagues from attending this forum, from the JICA, from the Islamic Development Bank, and also from other organizations. Let me thank UN Office South-South Cooperation for this opportunity, for the partnership, which started effectively since last year, 2019 and also 2020, particularly with the publishing of PPD's best practices in the South-South galaxy. And I wish to congratulate UN Office South-South Cooperation for this initiative. And also by selecting PPD as Partner of the Month in January 2021. PPD is committed to consolidate its strategic partnership with UN Office of South-South Cooperation for the promotion of South-South and triangular cooperation and the implementation of the BAPA recommendation among its member countries and with other developing countries. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, as you are all aware, COVID-19 is currently sweeping the globe, impacting social, political, and economic spheres. It has brought the biggest humanitarian crisis to the world community in the last 100 years. And since 1980, the frequency and diversity of new diseases seems to have increased steadily. Epidemiologists, medical population, professionals, experts, and scientists have failed to predict the spread and impact of COVID-19's outbreak and come up with the strict measures that we are now taking, which is social distancing and wearing masks and washing hands, and also turning our life to what we call the new normal. As their social economic response, the government also are providing massive fiscal support to protect firms, households, and vulnerable population. And in this also COVID-19, there's some hope as some countries have progressed with the vaccines, started also vaccinating their population and showing a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. But we are still in the middle of the crisis and we have to be very careful since the new strain of COVID-19 seems to be more dangerous and also maybe as it is spread very rapidly. And the global response and conduct should attach primacy to solidarity, friendship, and partnership. Exchange of good practices, capacity building, knowledge sharing, and technical assistance and transfer of technology through the promotion of South-South cooperation in policy responses will certainly help mitigate the impact of the pandemic crisis and keep us on track for achieving our common global goals, particularly related to the Nairobi commitments of 2019 about ICPD program of action, and also attaining the 2030 agenda in developing countries, and including in PPD member states. My intervention will be very brief and also will focus on how we are sustaining cooperation and global dialogues in reproductive health and population uses in light of COVID-19 crisis. What might be the new ways of engaging South-South cooperation and partnership if we are not physically able to move, to travel, and also to see each other's, and how we are becoming creative with our cooperation within this time of webinar, Zoom meeting, and online communication. And this is what we find as the best way to keep our work on.
Mr. Isa,
yes.
We have a very limited time, so can you?
Yes, I'm going very quickly. Minute? Okay. Oh, 1 minute. Yeah. Let me say of the last 27 years, since PPD was launched in Cairo in 1994, the occasion of the International Conference on Population and Development. Partners in Population and Development, as a global leader in South-South cooperation, reproductive health, family planning, had made significant contributions to advance global health and development agenda with the strong commitment of its member states and support from its partners for the promotion of South-South and triangular cooperation. And like all organizations, PPD adopted the online cooperation, Zoom exchange, and webinar to continue our member countries' commitments toward the achievement of our goals. We found ourselves survivors through telemedicine, which is our challenge. And in this context, PPD conducted several virtual activities for experience of information sharing, especially among the southern countries to win the battle against COVID-19. PPD, UNFPA, and National Health Commission of China have successfully organized International Interministerial Conference on South-South Cooperation. Also, several webinars on reproductive health, maternal and child health service to share the best experiences in China, but also in other member countries. And PPD updated its website with Chinese experience and also with other PPD member countries to share them with other developing countries. On capacity building, the southern countries also need special attention and focus on systematically upgrading the national capacity for reproductive health population. I will.
You are putting me in a difficult situation.
No, I will just 1 minute and then let me finish with the.
That's the third minute already. But
yes,
please,
that is, at the end of this presentation. Sorry, because I have also other things to share. But I wish to say that partisan population calls upon governments and international partners, including UN agencies, for a global solidarity and more South-South and triangular cooperation program. We have no other choices than joining our hands in fighting COVID-19 and to do what is right for men, women, girls, and around the world so that no one will be left behind. Southern Council can build a strategic partnership and take coordinated actions around 4 basic principles: scaling up best practices, mobilize domestic and international resources on recovery of pandemic, enhancing policy program space, and building capacity and resilience. This DG Forum will offer an excellent opportunity to listen, to share, but also to exchange best practices from different organizations. Thank you very much. Sorry, I wish to have more, at least minutes, 1 or 2 minutes, but it's okay. Thank you very much.
No, we always, I'm sorry, sometimes the role of the moderator is not the most pleasant one, but I need to keep the control of the time. Now we have our last but not least speaker, Professor, is he there? Professor Sachin Chaturvedi.
Thank you.
Okay, so he's Director General of the Research and Information System for Developing Countries, RIS, as you know, a major promoter of South-South and Triangle Cooperation. So Sachin, is a very pleasure to have you at this panel too. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Carlos. Thanks to JICA, UNOSSC, and ISDB. Thanks to my very dear friend Tariq for getting all of us together. Thanks, Anna and Yuko, for your excellent remarks. And thanks, Mr. Isa, for laying out the broad contours of cooperation. Since time is very limited, I am not using my PowerPoint, and I'm not very keen to read out from the text that is before me. I would just like to make 3 very quick points. I'm glad, Carlos, you captured what South-South cooperation has delivered during the crisis, and you captured very well how in different areas this has been given by southern countries to each other. Anna has brought out a broad sort of development finance gap and how triangular cooperation is going to take us forward. My emphasis, Carlos, would be on economic cooperation that South requires. And I think given the huge lockdowns that across countries we have seen, the GDP has really shrunk very badly. We require domestic resources. We require local livelihood security, employment. And from that point of view, I feel internationalization and using of trade for that purpose, value chains to come up, I think is extremely important for the South to focus on. What are the ways we can improve our international trade? What are the ways we can reduce the transaction costs in trade by adopting trade facilitation measures is something which is extremely important for the new jobs to be created. The livelihood security is important. And I'm very glad that Anna has told us this huge gap of $4.7 trillion in development finance. And this gap is not small. So BAPA plus 40 gives us the roadmap. It gives us the opportunities that we can leverage science, technology, and innovation, leverage e-commerce, leverage the bandwidth that is available with us for policy choices. including the regimes that are required to be addressed on foreign direct investment. What kind of regime we require for FDI? Carlos, it was after the second round of recession from 2014 onwards that many of the southern economies were already grappling with loss in productivity and loss in employment. Now the COVID crisis has further deepened those divides in the society. So we have to make our respective development processes more inclusive and more concerned about the carbon footprints that southern countries are leaving behind. So from that point of view, it is also important that for robust growth, we bank on trade, we bank on FDI, we bank on policy measures that are more environment friendly. And last point that I want to emphasize is in terms of institution settings that we need. And I alluded to that, but I think South would have to do enough in terms of responding through the robust institutions that are there. There is no dearth of economic literature. Several of think tanks from the South, UNOSSC itself has brought out several papers, and I think it is all very well documented. Even South Center has published papers which are talking about the way we need to go forward when it comes to the idea of strengthening institutions, particularly in terms of identifying the mobilization of external assistance that we are getting. And from that point of view, the leading emerging economies of the South have greater responsibility on G20 platform to strengthen the initiatives that are there, so that countries do not end up in huge debt and an inability to move local resources. And that, I think, is important. The G20 is trying. The Italian presidency has made trade free of some of these proposals. South Africa and India have moved a proposal at WTO for TRIPS compatibility of some of these changes. I think opportunity has come, and we should not let it go. Today, time is extremely limited. I would not strain Carlos further in his chair, but I would end by saying that South has to come together, and platforms like this would give us an opportunity to explore in various areas how we can work better and, as I said, build it better. Thank you. Carlos, you are on mute.
Carlos,
sorry, yeah. Well, thank you very much for this very brief but deep analysis, Sachin, as usual. So you have highlighted the economics aspect. I think that's really very relevant, and also the need to continue working together in the South. So thank you very much for all the speakers for the presentations. I'm very sorry I had to keep the time. This is my responsibility. But now we may go directly into the questions if they are. I think you can manage if somebody is raising the hand. So otherwise, I would like to suggest a couple of questions to the panelists. So do you see any hand raised?
There is one hand raised from JICA, Hala Shukri.
Okay. Please. So can you take the floor from JICA? Introduce yourself.
Hala, if you can unmute, yeah.
Sorry, it's a mistake. I didn't mean to raise hand. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Okay. Well, then let me just make a very brief comment about the presentation. Very, very interesting, very deep analysis. I would like to, in particular, highlight Yuko's reference to the lessons that we can get from COVID-19 in terms of addressing the climate change. Of course, as he also mentioned, importance of transfer of know-how and sharing ways in which a crisis like this can be managed. And I made a number of very important suggestions, in particular, the concept of working more on an agenda for global public goods. I think that's very attractive. As you may recall, the UN Secretary General, when the COVID-19 crisis started, he mentioned that all products to deal with COVID-19 should be dealt as global public goods. This has not happened, however, and then we should inquire ourselves why this did not happen, and what should be done in the future in order to ensure that there is an innovation agenda that leads to outcomes which are accessible to all. So innovation without access does not mean anything. So we really need to work more on the concept of a global public good. Also, Anna, you mentioned the concept of a multilateral sectoral approach, and not a general approach to South-South and triangular cooperation, which is interesting. So Mr. Asa, you also mentioned the contributions that your organization has made. Thank you very much. And the comments by Sachin on the economic aspect are, of course, very, very relevant. This crisis is not just about health. This has shown the weaknesses in the health systems in developing countries, but has also shown vulnerabilities in the economic system. And now there is a need to address them. So if there isn't a hand raised, we still have a couple
Dr. Carlos,
yes.
I think there is a question there on the chat box.
Yes,
I think from the Islamic development. Yeah, I think I hope that the colleagues, they had a chance to look at it. Yeah.
Well, here I see a couple of questions. One for the panelists is, what does an enhanced improved multilateralism look like, taking into consideration the lessons learned from COVID-19? So this is about what kind of multilateral system we need to build up or consolidate in the light of COVID-19 crisis. So who is going?
And Carlos, I think you are the best person on the panel to respond. Of course, as a speaker, we can, but I presume.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead, Sachin. Go ahead.
No,
Sachin.
no, Carlos, you are the best person to respond to this. We may supplement, but you please respond.
Well, my response will be that we really need to strengthen the multilateral system. As we all know, it has been affected in the recent time by trends to unilateral actions. In the context of vaccine, this has been called the vaccine nationalism. But also there have been some actions that have undermined the multilateral system, and this is seen in many organizations, including in the case of the World Trade Organization. So now the challenge is to rebuild the system, to create again the trust of all participants in the system, that the multilateral system is able to promote development, and it will not undermine the efforts made by various countries. And the multilateral system itself, or the management of multilateral system, should understand that diversity is there. So we need to understand that there are diverse strategies for development, and all of them need to be respected and supported. So there is no one which should be preferred on other one. And then we have a multilateral system which is flexible enough to understand that the models of development may differ in terms of intervention in the economy or whatever, and that the common objective is to reach the sustainable development goals. Then we have a system on which all countries can operate and be able to achieve their own objectives based on the support given by the multilateral system, and not undermine eventually but what the rules of the system are. But then COVID-19 is calling for this process of making the multilateral system stronger, fairer, as I mentioned, more inclusive, and with an understanding that there might be different ways of reaching the objectives that each national government or region may aim at. So I don't know whether there is a further comment on this. There is a second question. What is not working? What needs to change? And what are the specific dimensions that South-South and triangular cooperation can support in improving? So what is not working? Yes, Sachin, please.
Carlos, what is not working is rhetorics. I think South has to come out of rhetorics. We need to see that economic connect among the Southern economies is only going to take us forward. Our banking structures, our finance, our idea of trade and investment, that has something to be done with. And we need to energize that process. And we have to shed off the impediments that are there in trade, investment, technology, and finance. And once that happens, we would see the South has a far quicker recovery. The idea of isolatory trajectories would not work. The partnership would, the convergence would, and we need to explore various contours for those part of cooperation that we are looking at. And that's where partnerships are important. We all have in this panel discussed the importance, relevance, and scope that we get from triangular cooperation. So I think it's important that for quick and green recovery, we have the heft of these partnerships. South-South cooperation is extremely important. It has the bandwidth and the ability to deliver, and I think that's what would take us forward. As Mr. Isa very rightly mentioned, that there are some of these dimensions that are going to provide new energy. As we are trying to establish them, as we are trying to launch them, new efforts are important. And those new efforts should be in the domain of economics. So what is not working is the rhetorics. What would work is pragmatism.
Yeah, thank you, Sachi. Yes. Yeah, Mr. Isa?
Thank you, Carlos. Just to react on the questions raised. And therefore, multilateralism, I think what should multilateralism do and is what South-South cooperation have done. And I think multilateralism should be more, as it was efficient. I mean, it has proved its efficiency over the last 30 or 40 years. But now it has to be more attention to the specific needs of the countries, of the communities, of the, what is needed by these, by the government, what else needed as intervention from multilateral agencies and organizations. I think what also about what should be done, what is not working. I think so far we have seen that South-South cooperation has a deficiency of national and government commitments and political will. And this is also what we have seen in some countries. As in PPD member countries, we have, the commitment of our members, to go forward, to promote South-South cooperation and to engage in South-South activities. But there are some commitments that need to be done. For example, the political, also the mobilization of domestic resources, which is needed to develop South-South activities. And also, I think there is one thing which we all should work to promote South-South cooperation is the public-private partnership. We have very good experience in many countries that how private companies with the government work together to develop expertise and to exchange, to replicate the best practice and the experience in other developing. That's also very good. We have to work also on that. And I think this is also the new, the way forward for South-South cooperation to be more, to have more impact in developing countries. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you also for these comments. Anna, you did mention the concept of partnerships rather than individual projects. I think that's very important. Also, this may be missing. This may be one of the areas which is not working. There may be some projects which are done in the context of South-South joint cooperation, but this may not be leading to partnership. And this is the important concept. So I don't know whether you want to elaborate. It's just 1 minute because we are now ending this session.
1 minute, Carlos. Why partnership is so important as the project itself that we develop? Because if we don't create trust and if we don't know each other, we cannot move from local initiatives to a global agenda. We need to start trusting different partners to work together. We need to start talking about solution-oriented development cooperation instead of starting by talking about politics. And politics is very important, but we learn a lot on South-South and Triangle cooperation that we can focus on solutions first and then talk politics afterwards. If we can move that attitude, that mindset to the global discussion on multilateralism and global public goods, probably we can understand that all the wheels were already invented. We just need to work together to scale them up with no preconcepts, with no prejudice. If it comes from the south, the north, the west, or the east, doesn't matter. What matters is that we feel that that's a good solution that we all should invest on or try to scale up or try to adapt also to different contexts. I stop here. So that will be my pitch.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. So we are now ending this session. Tariq, I'm almost on time. So important concept, global public good. This should be a priority for the work of the international community based on the principle of solidarity and fraternity. This should be aimed, but we need to introduce reforms in many aspects, including, for instance, how innovation is made, how the products of innovation are shared. The concept of partnership beyond individual projects, that's an important one. What Sachin said is not rhetoric, it's concrete actions, is solving the problems. And we are all engaged, I think, in the different organizations. And thank you very much again for the organizers to invite in the South Center. We are all engaged in doing South-South cooperation, something concrete, which is of material assistance to different countries, not just a rhetorical kind of measure or communication, but something that works for development and works for now addressing the suffering of so many people in the South. Well, thank you very much again, Tariq, for this opportunity to share with you the views of the panelists and also for inviting the South Center.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Carlos, for moderating very ably this discussion and also for sharing with us important insight about what the South Center is doing. So I think this was really a very important discussion about important issues. And if there is any major takeaway from this discussion is that less rhetoric and more action. I think this is an important message that we can convey to our participants. And I will also say that this panel is really a vivid example of how South-South Triangular Cooperation is multi-stakeholder in nature. So we are bringing different multi-stakeholders, different actors that they can speak to each other, they can learn from each other, they can exchange with each other. But most importantly, that these old stakeholders and actors, they have embraced South-South cooperation as a modality of cooperation in order to achieve the SDGs and also to support countries to achieve their national development goals. So just a few words about triangular cooperation, because I myself, I was a witness during the negotiation of the BAPA plus 40. And I have to say that the BAPA plus 40 has brought important recommendations about triangular cooperation. And I myself, at that time, I said after the adoption of that important document that we have to walk the talk. And I am happy to see that Anna has brought us what OECD and OECD members have been doing in order to implement the recommendations. And I have to say that from the beginning, we took triangular cooperation from a very practical, pragmatic point of view. And this is what we have been discussing from the beginning, in order how triangular cooperation could be mainstreamed. And this is, Anna, what you said, in the development schemes and the strategies of the triangular cooperation actors, and to make it an important element of the endeavor and activities in order to support countries of the South to achieve their sustainable development goals. But I'd like to thank all the panelists for their really insightful presentation and ideas and thought. We have come to the end of this opening session. This was really a very rich discussion. I'd like to thank all the distinguished speakers for the insightful presentation and for sharing with us ideas how we can bring solutions to the challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like also to thank the moderators for ably moderating all the sessions, and also the participants for their presence and also for active participation, all the questions that you have asked. But also the contributions that we have heard today that have given us an ample evidence that South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation are really key elements of the international cooperation for sustainable development. And we'll try to reflect all these ideas in the report of the DG Forum, but most importantly in the conclusions of the recommendations that we will share with you just after we finish this DG Forum edition. And we would like to also to hear from you how you can enrich that document. So we have come, as I said, to the end of this opening session. We will have just one hour break, and then we will resume at 10:30 for the first breakout session for the Americas. You can find the link in the program of the DG Forum. I think this will be a different link, and we'll be more than happy to have you in that session. And please join us in order to hear important insight and from important actors of South-South and triangular cooperation in the region of the Americas, in order to also to interact with them, to ask questions, and to see how we can further this discussion for the implementation of the BABA plus 40 recommendation, but also how we can work together, collaborate together, and coordinate with each other in order to overcome this crisis, but how, most importantly, how we can learn from this. So once again, thank you very much all, and I hope to see you soon in the breakout session for the Americas. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it.